Okay, so this is a video where we're going to discuss string bends and some ways to improve sort of your your inner ear intonation on getting those string bends to the correct pitch, and also on vibrato. So we're going to talk about string bends first, and we're going to go to A minor pentatonic. Okay, so for string bends, we want to make sure that the bends sound even and they get to the proper pitch that we're looking for. So most string bends are going to be either a half step bend, which is only 1 fret higher, or a whole step bend, which is 2 frets higher. All right, so let's take a look at a whole step bend and my kind of technique on how to get better at getting to the correct note. Okay, so for these bends, we're going to be in the A minor pentatonic and we're going to be on the G. So that means on the 7th fret, we want to bend that note to the 9th fret. So what we're going to do is we want to listen to that. We want to listen to this note on the 9th fret and kind of get an idea of what that pitch sounds like and familiar with it. So it's fresh in our memory. And then we want to bend on the 7th fret and do the best we can to try and match that. And that's a whole step bend. If we want to do a half step bend, we won't need to bend as high. And we'll test ourselves that way. So really what we're doing is we're just trying to develop our ear and also our muscle memory to get to those proper bends that we're looking to get to, and not have it be sharp where we're over bending or have it be flat where we're under bending. Quick thing with these bends is for the high E, B, G, and D strings, we're always going to be bending up. The pitch is always going to increase, but we're actually physically bending the string up towards the ceiling. If we're on the A string or the low E string, we can't bend up. Otherwise, we'll bend off the neck. So for those, we'll actually bend towards the ground, down. But we're still increasing the pitch. And the other time, we're bending up. All right, so let's take a look back at that bending technique. So we'll be on the high E string on the 8th fret. We want to bend that note, whole step up to the 10th fret. A little too high on that one. So that's sort of how I'm, developing my ear. Here's the B string. If you want to get even more technical, we can throw in a tuner to the mix to really kind of test, to make sure that we're on pitch. So I'm going to go back to that B string. 10th fret is the note that we're trying to bend to, which is an A. Let me make sure I'm in tune. So it's an A. So slightly flat. Whoa, that was terrible. There we go, redeemed it. So you can test yourself that way, and that's going to help develop your ear for these bends. Another thing I want to talk about is a technique that we can incorporate to our bends to kind of give them a different sound. And what I'm talking about is applying with our picking hand a rake technique to the strings. So to do that, we need to mute the strings with our picking hand. And when I mute, I'm muting with like that, kind of where you would palm mute if you know how to do that. But muting basically with, this part of my hand. It's kind of the fleshy part of your hand, so I'm on the side of it. All right, so, and then another thing is hand position of where I keep my hand. So in this case, a lot of times where I keep my hand is this part that I use to mute, or this part of my hand kind of sits right on the saddle of my bridge, So I'm not touching the strings, but I'm very, very close to them. So where if I just move them slightly, I can get that mute in. No mute, mute. So it's almost like you can see I have a middle pickup here. So when I'm on, you know, the bridge side of this middle pickup, I'm not really muting. But if I move my hand over, now I'm muting. If I move it to the next side of it. So we're going to apply that type of technique to this rake technique. So we're going to bend this note on the 7th fret, but I'm muting with my picking hand, like the E, A, D, and not the G. And when I come to pick that, I'm picking through the A, D, and G, but bending up. So you get this. Kind of get this, that muted with that. You can do it on the B, where I'm playing through the D, G, and playing the B. So it just gives you like more, I feel like, attitude to that bend. And we definitely want to have more attitude when it comes to vibrato, because it's a form of expression. So you want to throw that attitude in there, I think. And I think those string rakes with those bends really emphasize it. So I'm doing a Okay, so that's some ideas about string bends, but I really think you should practice those rakes. They add this extra element of dynamics and expression to a bend. It makes it more interesting. Next thing I want to talk about is vibrato. So vibrato is a very nuanced thing that takes, time to develop, and it's something that you're just going to continue to perfect over time as long as you're aware of it. And you want it with vibrato. It's almost like you would rather be more subtle than more in your face with it. Sometimes you want to be in your face with the vibrato, but I feel like less is more sometimes, and you don't want to overdo it. But it also, there's no rules to it. I don't even know why I'm saying there's rules. You'll find your own way of doing it, and it's always going to be the right way. But here's some different ways of achieving vibrato to, express yourself in your playing. All right, so let's take a look at the first way, which we're going to stay in A minor pentatonic. And I'm just going to, for this vibrato, we're just going to be bending our strings up and down. And remember, when we're bending strings, we want to keep, if we're bending with our ring finger, we want to reinforce that bend with our middle and first finger. And when we're doing that, we're just, bending with all three fingers instead of one. If we have less strength bending when we're only bending with one than when we have three. So, like if you're trying to bend, you may not get that pitch if you're only bending with one string. So do yourself a favor, give yourself a little bit more bend strength, and use more fingers for those bends. I mean, obviously you can't if you're bending with your first finger, like. But if you're bending with your ring finger, I can reinforce it with my first finger. Always reinforce with bends when you can. Obviously, there's going to be instances when you can't, but when you do, definitely do it. Okay, so back to vibrato. So vibrato, we're going to bend this note on the G on the 7th fret, and we're going to add some vibrato by just bending it up and bringing it back to its resting position. And so the frequency of the vibrato all depends on how fast you're bending up and down and how high you're bending up and down too. So, and that's where the nuance comes in. And maybe you want something that's got some bounce to it like that. Or, I don't know, you may want that sometimes. But a lot of times you just want a nice even, or like more of a shaky one where you can kind of, so that's kind of up and down. When I'm doing it with my first finger, I'm kind of using these 3 fingers that I'm not fretting as sort of like ways to help it, you know, get that bend going. So we have that way, up and down. And you're giving that vibrato to it, and we can adjust the frequency of that wave. Where, you know, we have that high frequency where the wavelengths are close together, so it's kind of a closer bend to a. So you can adjust it accordingly. Another way is, I like this way a lot. This is where you get more of a subtle vibrato. And basically it's where we're pressing down on, we're fretting the note, and we're planting it, and then when we play it, we're basically just rolling. So I'm rolling my finger to the left and right of where I'm pretty much planting it. And, you know, the faster you roll, you know, the higher the frequency of vibrato will be to you get a nice slow one. So there's that way. I like that way a lot. Another way, it's kind of a little slight variation of that, is where instead of rolling, we're just going to slide our finger between the two. You know, it's similar to the roll technique, but we're just allowing our finger to slide between the frets. You want to be careful though with this one, because if you go a little too far, you're going to hear that fret. Or if you cross it, you're going to be a different pitch. So that's another way of doing vibrato. But the biggest thing is to just really listen to your playing, be very aware of just vibrato when you're actually practicing it. You almost have to be intentional about practicing it, because it's one of those things that, I feel like there's not a lot out there to teach people how to practice and develop vibrato. But these are a couple good exercises to get you to at least start thinking about them, and then applying them to like your pentatonic scales and things like that, or really whatever you're playing. You can always add vibrato to things. So I hope that helps.